Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight, COVID hospitalizations increase as non-COVID patients fill the isolation ward. Tax debate rages on social media after changes to VAT. And the nation's youngest real estate broker tops sales charts.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs, topping news tonight. COVID-19 hospitalizations are increasing quickly, with more than half of those patients reporting to hospital for non-COVID issues. A senior physician says people who come in for other procedures test positive and have to be isolated.
Half or under half are presenting with those symptoms. But we are seeing a large number of patients who are presenting for other medical or surgical problems.
Director of the National HIV/AIDS Infectious Disease Program, Dr. Nakia Forbes, highlighting a unique challenge during this fourth wave. More than 80 COVID cases were in hospital this week. However, a number of them were admitted for non-COVID care.
Yes, they're included in the hospitalized patients because once that happens, they would need to be in a COVID isolation ward.
Forbes describes Omicron variant that officials suspect is the dominant strain impacting the country as more mild with typical flu-like symptoms, including sore throat, runny nose, coughs, muscle aches, and pain and fever. However, the vast amount of cases have resulted in a sharp increase in patients hospitalized with COVID. Those who are ill are having some serious symptoms.
But we are still seeing persons who are presenting with more severe symptoms like shortness of breath and difficulty breathing.
Forbes says while Omicron has demonstrated an ability to break through vaccinations and infect fully vaccinated individuals, there's no doubt that the most seriously ill patients are those who haven't gotten the jab.
We are still seeing persons the sicker patients, the ones who can't breathe and have to be admitted into the intensive care unit and need a lot of oxygen. Those persons are unvaccinated.
Doctors Hospital CEO Dr. Charles Diggis says they are seeing a similar trend, with unvaccinated patients requiring the most care.
It is unusual to find in that population so far during this particular surge. We certainly have yet to find an individual who's either fully vaccinated or boosted.
Doctors Hospital CEO Dr. Charles Diggis is defending the effectiveness of antigen tests, as large amounts of testing reveals that the quicker and admittedly less sensitive form of testing sometimes doesn't pick up COVID infections. Diggis says there are other respiratory illnesses such as flu, cold, and fever that can explain a person's symptoms. He added that an antigen test can be helpful to determine if a person can pass the virus on after their symptoms abate.
When it comes to the rapid test, the understanding that I'm getting from our specialist is that after the illness, the rapid test is a stronger correlate to infectivity, to whether you're likely to transmit the infection.
Doctors Hospital's rapid antigen positivity has climbed steeply during the fourth wave. In September, it peaked at 1.38% and decreased in October to November, going as low as 0.33%. It increased to 4.47% in December, and on Thursday, it reported that its positivity rate was 56.3% for PCR tests and 13.82% for antigen tests. Diggis says a negative antigen test after a COVID infection can be a reliable indicator.
Consistent with the CDC recommendations, we advise patients that if you've been tested positive, you have the symptoms, and once your symptoms have abated, then 5 days subsequent, you may simply do a rapid test, and if that's negative, that's a fairly reliable indicator that you are now free to move out of quarantine.
COVID hospitalizations are beginning to rise locally as the United States has already seen a surge in pediatric cases needing hospitalization. While children 5 years and older have been approved for the COVID vaccine, that extension has not become available in the Bahamas yet. Christina Dragovich tells us more.
We haven't heard very much, to be honest with you. We have spoken, Dr. Lightbourne, who's our president, has spoken to the Minister of Health about it, but they haven't given us a firm word as yet.
General pediatrician Dr. Sherelle Lockhart says local pediatricians have been waiting for more information from government about when that rollout can begin.
Our question was, can we decentralize giving vaccines to kids? Can offices give vaccines to kids? And on the surface, it sounded like they thought that was a good idea, but we just have not had the rollout yet.
In the United States, children as young as 5 were approved for the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine back in October. Doctors Hospital President and CEO Dr. Charles Digges says if you follow the science, the approvals for younger kids may follow soon.
Since the direction seems that 12 has now moved down to 5, we need to pay a lot of attention to that because there is considerable benefit if we are able to safely vaccinate all the way down to 5-year-olds. And I think eventually you may be looking at including it in a regime as soon as possible after birth.
Dr. Lockhart says every family will make the decision that's best for them.
I am finding that people have traveled to take their kids to be vaccinated. And, you know, that's every individual's choice. Before the younger age group, the 12-year-olds, before they were able to be vaccinated, I took my daughter over to get her vaccine because I wasn't sure how long it would take us. And I needed her protected, especially in the job that I have. I needed her to be protected.
Reporting for our news, I'm Christina Dragovich.
A senior government official defending the decision to reduce the rate of VAT to 10% and add the tax to medication and breadbasket items, saying the overall tax liability of Bahamians was reduced on January 1st. However, some critics suggest the move increased the cost of basic goods for vulnerable groups of Bahamians.
So overall, the cost or the tax liability for Bahamians was reduced on January 1st.
Financial Secretary Simon Wilson defending the VAT reduction that came along with the reimposition of VAT on breadbasket items. Wilson says the change was meant to make the tax system more fair.
This is part of the government's initiative to bring in equity and fairness to the tax system.
But critics say the higher cost of basic goods will be tougher on poorer Bahamians. Some of those critics also pointed out that government did away with plans to implement a tax on gambling winnings. One Twitter user wrote, removing VAT off gambling and adding VAT to breadbasket items, medication, and female hygiene products. Wow. Another user responded, absolutely crazy. It's like they don't care about us or the poor. How is gambling benefiting us? A different user disagreed with the previous two, saying gaming houses pay taxes. Now winnings will no longer be taxed. When a Bahamian wins, they'll receive all their funds. Meanwhile, the financial secretary says VAT being lowered won't negatively impact the country's bottom line.
Based on all the calculations, this reduction is going to be revenue neutral and actually slightly positive in terms of revenue yield. So it's not going to result in an increase of the fiscal deficit. That's a very important point.
Wilson says other changes came into effect on January 1st.
On January 1st, offshore financial services will move from exempt, zero-rated, backdated to July 1st, 2019. For the offshore financial services sector, that's a very important change. It meant for them that their tax liability for the government effectively became zero.
He added small businesses also benefit from adding VAT back to breadbasket items.
On breadbasket items, which comprise for many small businesses, small retail grocery stores, the majority of their sales, those persons could not recover the VAT on the sale of those goods. So many small businesses, small grocery stores, had to carry accounts receivable, VAT receivables from the government, refund receivables for a long period of time. So that change was made, which really benefits small businesses.
When our news comes back from the break, the Bahamas Bar Association president says an independent judiciary is long overdue, and take a plunge with Rotary. We'll tell you how after the break. As members of the legal community prepare for the opening of the legal year, Bar Association President Khalil Parker once again stressing the importance of an independent judiciary.
Yes, it continues to be long overdue. Bar Council supports it wholeheartedly. I believe that we are on the cusp now of the passage of that bill. Cabinet is presently considering it, and we look forward to the implementation of that legislation.
In January 2021, Chief Justice Brian Marie said the court services bill would take the courts to another level by giving it a level of financial, operational, and administrative autonomy while being accountable to the Ministry of Finance and Parliament. The bill was tabled in Parliament in 2020.
It is very important that in our parliamentary democracy, we understand that the democratic will of the people is articulated through general elections in the formation of the legislature. And every other branch is populated through that process, both the executive and the judiciary to a certain extent. But insofar as we can liberate the judiciary from fiscal constraints and administrative constraints that hold back the perception of its independence and its practical ability to adjust and adapt, that is very important in making the promise of independence real.
The Rotary Club of Southeast Nassau is encouraging Bahamians to take the plunge or at least support the individuals who are brave enough to participate in this year's Polar Bear Swim. This majority rule holiday, nearly 24 participants will race into the sea at Jaws Beach to raise money.
It's not as cold as it would have been in the past, but look, as a Bahamian, I'm not going into the sea until August. So this is, I don't care what it is, it could be 65 degrees, it's cold.
Club President Calvin Wheat says it is one of the initiatives that will help to fund projects in the community, especially since donations have been hard to come by during the pandemic.
But the idea is that every dollar that we raise, that we give away. And so some of our projects involve a Christmas party. This is just one of the smaller ones, but a Christmas party for the patients of the Robert Smith Ward there at Sandilands. We support All Saints Camp.
We've had several food drives that we've been able to donate to families that are in need due to change in circumstances. Also in terms of digital learning, schools went online and there were a lot of students that maybe needed that little extra help, whether it was internet access or just being able to access their online learning.
Club fundraising director Kellyanne Frendo has already taken the plunge in her native Gibraltar, but she is dedicated to raising funds in the Bahamas as part of the Rotary family. Last year, the club raised $3,000 in the Polar Bear Swim. COVID restrictions prevent a large number of spectators from cheering on participants this year, but donations are welcome through the Alive Together Bahamas app. Visit Our News Bahamas on Facebook for the details. When Our News comes back from the break, the nation's youngest broker top sale charts, and later we've got your quote of the week, so stay with us. Welcome back. The nation's youngest real estate broker is celebrating his title as top producer at his real estate firm. From beachfront property to commercial buildings, Danny Lowe has set himself apart in a very competitive industry.
I just sold this unit 2 weeks ago and decided he wants to lease it, so we're going to take it to the market for rent.
That's the kind of year 29-year-old Danny Lowe had, ultimately earning the award for top producer at Better Homes and Gardens MCR Bahamas Group.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege because all of my colleagues work extremely hard. Like you say, it's a competitive firm, so I don't take it lightly. I put a lot of time into my craft, and I guess I'm just enjoying the accolade.
In a 2021 that started out a lot different than it ended, due in part to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, Lowe says he had to be creative. Available supply was quickly taken up, so he had to dig deep to service his clients' needs.
I had to then find listings that weren't traditionally on the website and the MLS and these forms. You had to look at expired listings. You had to look at folks you spoke to 3 years ago and said, hey, maybe I might sell if I got the right price, right? And you'll find that's a lot of the real estate market. What is the right price? Is it market? Do they want market rate? Maybe they want to be paid a little bit more. And sometimes the buyer wants that asset so much that they don't mind paying 10% more.
That consistency paid off. At 29, Lowe is the youngest real estate broker in the country, another designation that he is proud to carry. In order to take that step, the entrepreneur had to complete a series of sales and rentals. Being a broker is really the top role in the profession.
It reflects on how serious I take the trade, and that, I guess, reflection of my clients in terms of my training and my designations that, I'm highly qualified to assist you in your real estate purchase. So that is in part why I would have sought after to get my broker's license.
Lowe owns other businesses and enjoys traveling and boating in his free time. He hopes to repeat as number one in 2022 and wants to grow his portfolio of listing inventory. He describes his firm's owner, Mario Carey, as a significant influence on him.
Mario's who brought me into the business. He showed me the ropes, and he's sold quite a bit of real estate. So I've definitely taken a lot of notes from his style, and seeing the things he's done has been successful, and it's definitely has impacted me in a positive way. I appreciate him for it.
Your quote of the week is up next, so stay with us. It's time now for a look at the quotes that grabbed headlines this week. At number 3, a campaign promise fulfilled as free rapid antigen testing was rolled out in the Capitol on Saturday. Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Clint Watson, made the announcement on Thursday.
Sadly, in this country, a lot of people aren't testing and haven't tested for the past year and a half of this pandemic because they simply can't afford it. We want to provide an avenue where people do not have to say, I didn't test because I couldn't pay for a test.
At number 2, Leader of the Opposition, Michael Pintar, calling government irresponsible for taking lockdowns and curfews off the table.
It is irresponsible for a government to completely take off the table tools that may, at some point in the future, be useful and necessary for a country.
And the quote of the week comes from Prime Minister Philip Davis, who paid tribute to Sir Sidney Poitier following his death on Thursday. Davis said in due course, government will reveal plans to honor the Bahamian icon.
Well, I think we did a lot to give him his flowers while he was alive, but we have not done enough, I think. We intend to sit as a government to determine what else we can do to mark his burying.
Thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Jared Higgs. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.